Hello, everyone, and welcome to our new mini series on theatre, acting, and education as part of the Society Hub podcast series. And it's part of the School for Business and Society at the University of York. Today, I am privileged and absolutely thrilled to have two wonderful contributors from Flying Cloud. And you're going to be learning a little bit more about them shortly. And we are going to be speaking to members of the Flying Cloud, Leandra Ashton and Jessica Sias Wilson, in relation to the innovative role of theatre, acting, and education, specifically human resource business education here at the University of York. I'll let Leandra and Jessica say a few words in just a few moments. But before we do that, I just wanted to give everyone a little bit of an overview in terms of our focus today. And today's podcast, series one in our mini series, is looking at the insight into innovative approaches to education and learning in the lecture room here at the University of York School for Business and Society. In particular, the theatrical approach to teaching human resource management in order to give students an immersed experience of working in HR and what that feels like before they graduate and before they take up their first role in HR in any given organization. There are a number of firsts that we're celebrating today. And the first is that this podcast is the first one where we will have more than one contributor. So this is our first panel podcast. So it's wonderful that we're having that with Flying Cloud, with whom I, as your host, Sinead McCotter, senior lecturer here at the University of York, has had a long-standing working relationship spanning over 10 years with Flying Cloud, which has just been fantastic. So really thrilled that we're able to have the podcast today. In addition, within this podcast, a second first that we're going to be celebrating today is that while I am both your host today and also a senior lecturer, I'm going to be forming part of the conversation with Leandra and Jessica from Flying Cloud in relation to how we've worked together in presenting this theatre and acting approach and much, much more to our university HR students here at the school. So without further ado, I'm going to formally welcome Leandra Ashton and Jessica Sias Wilson and just invite them to say a few words, maybe about their role and their specialism within their given field of theatre and performance. So over to you. Welcome, Leandra and Jessica. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure. So, hello, everybody. My name is Jessica. I've been working with Flying Cloud for a few years now. My background is I began as a professional actor at quite a young age, from 8 years old. I worked in theater and film and television. Also, I was a very committed dancer. So I was working as an apprentice with a professional dance company when I was 14. I then went on to study at university dance in theater and choreography. And it was in theater that I was introduced to this concept of somatics and embodiment, which is a lot of the foundation of, or one of the foundations of the principles that we work with in Flying Cloud. And so that is embodiment is kind of the expertise that I bring to the work that we do here.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jessica. Leandra, would you like to say a few words?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Leandra, and I founded Flying Cloud as an out of work, very frustrated actress. I trained at RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. And before that, I was at Cambridge University studying modern and medieval languages. Some might think that's kind of unrelated, but I see it as this fascination with language and communication that was always there. And Flying Cloud began as a theatre company. So we put on plays, we wrote, directed, performed plays, and toured them around the UK. And we funded that through working with businesses. So the company has really morphed and evolved over the years, and now we offer, more often than not, workshops into businesses. So our relationship with the University of York is quite an unusual one and quite unique. So normally we're working with businesses, and Yeah, my background as a performer, as a writer, director, actress, I suppose has morphed into helping other people with their own stories and helping people express confidently and with clarity who they are, what they want. And that idea of what they want has also helped us evolve into the space of well-being. So an area that we're all really passionate about, helping people sustain themselves, personally resourcing ourselves so that we aren't pouring from an empty cup. And yeah, that's me, and delighted to be here and chat with you, Sinead.
Wonderful. Thank you both very, very much, Leandra and Jessica. And in terms of both, the whole context of embodiment, also the importance of communication, even if it was medieval, Leandra has brought us to an insight that we actually didn't know we had in common. And that is that my primary degree, before I did my master's, was in communication. So it's wonderful that we're learning even at this stage of 10 years of working. So fantastic. Thank you both very, very much. Um, Before we begin, most listeners and viewers to our podcast, when they think of professional actors and theatrical performance, might immediately think of a play within a traditional theatre setting. But I know from our long working relationship that that is not the full picture of your expertise in Flying Cloud and how you apply your expertise and talents. Could you say a little about the variety of ways in which you apply your professional theatrical talents and expertise for the people that you work with?
So primarily, people often approach us because they need help with public speaking. Very often it's public speaking, it's nerves. People are nervous about standing in front of a group. And often as we start to work with them, they realize that we're working with the body, we're working with the breath, and we're working with the voice. And as soon as we're working with those three elements, they can go very, very deep. They are intrinsically connected to our psychology and who we are and how we present ourselves to the world. So often what we do with people is we can start at just a very, very practical level of, right, you've got a presentation to do, or you have a colleague that you're working with and you're having very difficult it's a very difficult relationship. How can you improve that communication? And then as we go through, it ends up, if they wish to, going a lot deeper. So I often talk about how when we start working with the body, the breath, and the voice, immediately we're working with the mind. And I invite people to think of themselves as like a walking library with a million stories all installed within us. And some of those stories are really helpful and some of those stories are really unhelpful. And how do we become aware of those stories, starting to kind of maybe get into the back recess of a corner that we haven't accessed in a very, very long time, and pulling out that story and going, wow, okay, is that serving me? When did that get installed? I don't even remember that being installed, but does that serve me? And what do I want to do with it? Maybe I want to throw it out and write a whole new story for that part of my life. So yes, it's body, breath, voice, but it's also very much about authenticity and who you are and being truly you in the world and being brave enough to do that. And a big foundation of that is our embodiment work, which Jessica is such an expert in with all her background in dance.
Yeah, I kind of like what you said, the foundation of the work in the theater world is the body, the breath, and the voice. And then as soon as you access that, it's deep. And I think my experience with embodiment was, as a performer, what I used to love about performing, what I could consciously say, was I was so in the moment. So there, when you're performing, it's like an altered, heightened state, and nothing else exists apart from that moment. And it was only later when I started actually studying the idea of embodiment that you could maybe do that all the time, which is actually a spiritual practice. It doesn't have to be a spiritual practice, but it is of Buddhists and monks. So this idea of being in the body, it goes very deep and helps you participate with life, whatever you're doing.
The word would be presence, wouldn't it? It's that once people are embodied and connected to their breath, then they bring a presence to all of their communications, which is really special.
Absolutely. And I think what's really enriching about what you've both kindly shared very generously with our listeners and viewers really connects into how our working relationship began in terms of my background in human resource management education at university and all that graduates in human resource management, often referred to as personnel or the people profession, all that those graduates have to contend with, working with fellow colleagues, peers, the pressure of employment contracts and the work setting really draws in so much of what you have kindly shared and really gave us that common space to begin working with one another all those years ago. So thank you very, very much for those details. It just sounds and always has done sound so exciting to me when I heard about your work way back, as far back as 2015. And the fact that you can take your professionalism and your expertise into any organizational setting or voluntary setting or individuals working with them at a personal level to help people learn is fantastic. And we really are here today to focus on learning and education. And I'm sure this approach will be really interesting and perhaps even new for many of our listeners and viewers to hear today. I imagine, though, that at times your clients and audience members find your approach to be very new. They may not have come across this type of approach to work before. What type of reactions do you get when working with people in their own settings?
I'd say it's very varied, but generally people are quite nervous. They come in because we give pre-questionnaires out, and it's generally, or we ask them on the day, how are you feeling? And then generally people are a little, so they come with nerves. They feel like, well, I've never done this kind of work before. And we just very gently remind them, well, you're human and we all breathe and we're all here. And that's kind of the first step.
Yeah, I think we encourage people to we ask people to not leave anything at the door. So everything is encouraged. The nerves, the so-called sort of negative feelings, the apprehension, we encourage it, and even the skepticism, because it's all part of being human. And actually, skepticism is very, very useful, and actually, I think should be cultivated. So we say bring all of that and mix it into the pot, so that then from that we can be on the same page. Let us know. We're very good, but we're not mind readers. So let us know what's going on inside you, and either we will have worked with people who have gone through those feelings or those thought patterns or physical sensations, or we will have personally felt them ourselves. And we generally invite people to really lean into their discomfort. And we always, pretty much every workshop ends up using one of our favorite quotations, which is fear, discomfort, and insecurity are your compass towards growth. So we really encourage people to lean into that, and the compass being very much this idea of, well, what's going on the inside that's going to be able to guide me in this outer world, whatever it is I'm navigating, whatever it is I'm facing, whatever storm is in my current surroundings. How can I use that as an opportunity to grow and to evolve?
Absolutely. And again, just in terms of how I've seen you both work and with the other wonderful professionals from Flying Cloud as well, what you've said is so true. It's so true for student learners who have so much to manage and to juggle in their academic studies. And I know our students have really been very appreciative of the approach that Flying Cloud have taken, where you really have accepted where each of them are at when they come into the learning space to work with you and myself in that HR education. But it also reflects some of the reality that HR professionals face, because often you do not know what you're going to face from day to day. You may have your formal contract and your to-do list, as do your fellow employees. but life gets in the way, work gets complicated. And so being able to accept those nuances is really, really important. So really, really, really vital for our listeners and viewers to hear what you've just shared. Thank you. The focus of today's podcast, as I mentioned, is learning and education within a university business school, but particularly from an innovative theatre approach to HR. But before we say more about that, could you perhaps both say a little bit about the ways in which you'll find that people learn through your work?
Well, maybe this is just me, but I learn through my body. I learn through experience. And that has always been our approach with Flying Cloud. Now, bearing in mind, I also went to a very academic university, right? Doesn't get much more academic than Cambridge. So I know what it's like to sit in a lecture and listen to a lot of information being given to me. And then I also have had the experience of being at drama school, where everything is embodied and everything is about, well, try it, get it up on its feet and try it out. How does it feel? What does it make the other person do? So I think generally speaking, as a society, we are all very conditioned into the very left side of the brain, which is information, perceive, particularly now with all screens and technology and all the rest of it, is how do we gather information into this like box in our brain that's like a computer? And we forget that we have a whole body. And what we do a lot in our work is we invite people to absolutely brilliant left brain, fabulous way of attending to the world. But how about the right side of the brain, which is a little bit more emotional, illogical, instinctual, and includes the body? You know, how do we bring the body into our communications so we're not just coming in as a head talking?
Absolutely. I think it is. My question, Leandra, was very much how have you found that people learn through your
Yeah,
work?
yeah.
And I think if I can pick up just what you said about just the importance of that body and the embodiment, it really speaks to a lot that HR professionals and indeed students face day to day because um, even HR managers and professionals, they have a bad day, they may have personal matters that they're dealing with, and yet when they come into work, they have to leave that aside in order to be there to handle often very difficult conversations with their employees. And so I think there's a lot of richness in what you've said about the importance of taking time to think. Yes, the academic left side of the brain, that's all really, really important, but we're not just that part of our brain. There are
Yes.
other dimensions and richness to what we learn, but also how we learn. So I think what you said is really, really wonderful. Thank you.
Kind of took the words exactly out of my mouth because as I was thinking, I was like, what would I say? And I said, I think people learn through experiencing their bodies, the full package. And although we are taught to write notes and take it all down, and that is useful, I actually think we need to make sure we've absorbed it first, even before we go there, because you could miss because our bodies work slower, right? So our minds are really quick and our bodies absorb information in a slower way. It processes things, but it picks up subtler information than just the mind. And so I think if people are able to let their notes down and just absorb, that's where the real learning happens. It kind of goes into your whole being. And then it's great to take notes as well. But I think that's where people actually learn. That's my perspective.
Absolutely. It's wonderful. And I know from our students' point of view, what they've shared with all of us, both in the lecture room, but also as I've told you both, Leandra and Jessica, both the students have also come to me privately and talked about, how really invaluable they've found the learning approach that we've undertaken with them. And one of those learning points has been around that aspect of just being aware you might be dealing with your own challenges and personal matters, but when an employee or a colleague comes to speak to you about a personal or confidential matter, the importance of just giving them your all, your attention. You may not always be able to tell them yes or give them the answer they want to hear, but you can be present to them. And there's such a richness in how they've learned that. And I know our students and the School for Business and Society are hugely grateful to what you've brought to our learning environment through that. So thank you for that. I would like to ask both of yourselves as members of Flying Cloud. Yes, we've been working together really successfully for the last 10 years, particularly within human resource education here at the University of York in the School for Business and Society. But I'd love to hear from both of you, Jessica and Leandra. How have you found the experience professionally in working with us?
I find it hugely rewarding to see young people being offered this material and to see them wake up. You know, you literally through the process, you see some of them coming in, and by the time, even if they're not still sure, they're a little more there and they're a little more present. And some of them really wake up, and it's this little bit of blossoming. And I think it's very special for these young students to be offered this and to get to see them.
Yeah, I agree. I think the students have taken to the work remarkably well considering they're so young.
Mhm.
Normally, we're working with senior leaders in organizations and CEOs, and the fact that they're getting this experience, we say this to them when we're working with them, you know, you guys are really lucky to get this at this point in your careers. You haven't even started your careers yet. You're still at university and you're getting this work because if you can put this in place now, then you're going to be so much better resourced as you go down, you carry on through the rest of your life and career. And I think what I've noticed in the students is, yes, a little bit of apprehension to begin with, you know, nerves, but then as they are trying out these different ways of being, they can feel it and they can see it in each other. Gosh, this actually works. And yeah, I would hire you rather than that person over there.
Mm.
Right. So it has value for them and it makes them feel better. They feel better in themselves. So I think the students have been incredibly mature in the way they've received the work and very open and just a delight to work with. And as Jessica said, there is something I think for all of us that is really heartwarming to see young people taking on this work, because I think young people, far more than our generations, have the challenge with technology and also a very different culture of, you know, they're used to being on their phones more than necessarily we were. So the
Yeah,
communication, the human to human communication isn't as practiced and as embodied necessarily in some of them as it perhaps was in us, because we just didn't have mobile phones when we were growing up.
absolutely.
Yeah, so it's important work.
Wonderful. It really is. And I know I can really emphasize and support what you said, that our students are hugely appreciative of both the work that you do with them, but also they're hugely appreciative of the School for Business and Society for seeing the potential in this innovative approach to HR education and supporting us in that. So we've heard that time and time again, which is really fantastic. And in many ways, you've actually both answered in a wonderful way the next question I was going to ask about what might you tell listeners and viewers about how you see the students learn through the theatre experience. So you mentioned about just being, you know, much more aware, much more present, that this is not all about rote learning. It's not all about articles as though they're important, and reading hugely vitally important, and that remains a really vital spine of the module that I teach and we work on together. But are there any other ways that you would like to share with listeners and viewers about how you've observed the students learning and through that theatre experience, really that light bulb moment, those, you know, they Jessica used a really inspiring word, you know, where we all wake up in some respects. Gosh, I need to be so much aware of how I'm saying something, not just what I'm saying.
I think that one of the ways they learn the most is through watching each other, because it's one thing for them to watch us because we've been doing this a while. It's another thing for them because we do this in workshops sometimes and we give the students the opportunity, and you see, it's like they can see the other student. I think you already said that, Leandra, but that's, I think, a really one of the ways it really clicks in.
And I think also it's a space for people to make mistakes, which is so important, because when you are in the world of work and you're having to have your first difficult conversation, that's a big deal, right? That's a really big deal. Or you're asking for a promotion or a pay rise for the first time, or whatever it is, whatever you're finding in the professional world. If you've managed to practice that a few times, or workshopped it with professional actors, then you're going to be far more likely for that conversation to go well. But I think it's kind of remarkable that we do very often, and this is professionals across the board, when we go and work in with lots of different organizations, from Swiss banks to construction companies, and we'll say to them, what's your preparation for this conversation or for your presentation? And they'll say, I get out my laptop and I do my slides, or I'll make some notes. And there's no sense of preparing the body, the breath, the voice, or the mind for what's about to happen. And I think the fact that the students at the University of York are getting this opportunity to practice these things and practice some of these tricky scenarios and seeing them played out live in front of them means that when they're faced with that, it can only be better than if they were going in completely cold.
Absolutely. And I think so much of what you've both said, I can identify with and just want to endorse as well. Because when I think back to that first time I approached Flying Cloud and yourself, Leandra, about this idea I had that I wanted to give students more than just the lecture experience, more than just the really vital theoretical framework of human resource management and the professionalism around that. And it really was around that piece of how can we fast track and give them exposure to ways of learning and ways of decision making that they wouldn't normally get until 5, perhaps 10 years into their career, when they've maybe succeeded in gaining a promotion. And as you've said, you normally do your wonderful work with senior professionals in banking and finance and other sectors. And so we find it hugely beneficial for our final year undergraduate students to really be immersed in that approach. And I've really seen a blossoming in terms of just much more strategic and clear thinking, but also that awareness of the importance of, as you say, Leandra, preparing your stance, your facial expression, your tone, how are you going to prepare for that, and what exactly is it that you want to say, not just your words, but how you say it. So I know our listeners and viewers will find what you shared to be really helpful and vitally important. While we do not have the means to go into the details of the module in this short time that we have together in this podcast, and while we do combine a lecture approach with a theatre performance approach in our HR education, which has been really rewarding, from your perspectives and the student experience of theatre approach to understanding HR as opposed to that traditional approach, what has been your insights? And you've mentioned a little bit over the last few minutes we've had together, but is there anything else you would like to say about just the richness and the layers that dual approach to teaching you've seen has brought to our students?
For me, I think it really is you're attending to the left brain and also the right brain. So they're getting the theoretical information that they require, but then they are learning practically how to embody it and how to use it. So I think that is the big difference. And I don't know of any other university. I mean, I'm sure that I hope there are other universities that are trying this out, but I'm not aware of them. We're not working with other universities in this way, where the students actually get a chance to practice something. And I think that's the big difference. That's why this approach works.
Exactly that. I was going to say it's balance. It's bringing a bit of balance into their experience, and it's the right brain and the left brain, or the body and the mind. But you need both of those things to be balanced in order to be clear. So it's very balanced.
And I just, add to that, just as the module leader of the module in HR that we collaborated on, that my whole focus was about giving students an experience of the HR department, of the people function, by relocating it in part to the lecture theatre through our workshops that we've been doing. So for me, that's also been a wonderful experience to see how the students have embraced that and how well we've both worked together. And as you say, Leandra, in this unique approach to this module as well. Many listeners and viewers would be forgiven for asking the question, is this just role play, a repackaging of role play? And in addition, I think everyone might consider some role play with perhaps negative connotations where people maybe are forced into taking on a character and perhaps feeling a little embarrassed. This is my background. I'm not used to this process. But what I have witnessed, uh, that your approach is entirely different, so supportive, nurturing of the student learners and audience members, and helpful to those learners. You always want learners in Flying Cloud to get to a spot where their confidence and awareness of a particular issue grows. And while that often requires learners to move out of their comfort zone, you always remain in the room and are present with them to help them. Can you say a little bit more about that, just to reassure our listeners and viewers today?
I think in all the years that we've done this, the word role play makes people's toes curl,
I
right? They
agree.
kind of they shrink away like, oh, please let it not be role play. And we don't do role play. If we do anything, we call it real play, because I think the ickiness around role play is that when you are pretending to be someone you're not. What we do in our workshops, particularly with you, Sinead, is we create a piece of forum theatre. So forum theatre is an amazing way of working to get underneath the surface of an issue or a problem. So initially, they are presented with a very realistic scenario that obviously we've created with you and that is performed by professional actors. And then we gradually lower them into those deep waters of real play, as it were. And rather than it just being simply I'm sitting here and I'm watching and I can comment, so there's some interaction there already, but then gradually we will lead them into, right, okay, now try it out, like try it out in your chair maybe, and now what happens if you try it out with this actor? Could you do that? And I mean, we found amazing response to that, right? We've seen it every time and time
Absolutely.
again, because it's not just, we're not throwing them in at the deep end. There's gradual increments to having the bravery to move out of the comfort zone and into what we call the courage zone, right? Which is just a very different space to
Absolutely.
inhabit. So I think the students are amazing with
I
that.
was just going to say, I think possibly also it's Flying Cloud's approach. So Leandra began Flying Cloud, so it's her approach to things. It's also my approach to things, is that we come with a real gentleness and a real humanness of like, we know we've been there. We're all in the same boat, and we all have all these things that we bring to this experience. And so we're not overarching. We're kind of bringing them, holding them in a way, so that hopefully they feel safe to do a little bit of exploration without a lot of expectation, just letting them experience what they experience.
Absolutely. And I just want to endorse what you've said again, because that I know our students have been hugely thankful of the patience that has been extended by us all to them in that situation, giving them time not just to try this new approach to learning, but also being patient with them and supportive once they step up to that process, and where they really do appreciate, wow, I'm getting a chance to learn what this future profession will be like before I get my first job in the HR profession, which is really unique and is fantastic. We're immensely proud of it. So thank you again for all the wonderful work that you do. We will have listeners and viewers today who are parents, guardians, even employers. What words of encouragement might you offer to them if they're learning about this innovative approach to education in HR for the first time?
Mine would be do it yourself. Give it a go yourselves and then see how remarkable that can be then for young people having that experience. Yeah, I mean, education, we didn't have this growing up. We didn't have this kind of educational experience. I mean, I suppose in a way Jessica and I did because we studied theatre and performance.
Yes.
Mhm.
But for most subjects, you don't get to experience it. You don't get to experience what is it like to actually be this uh,
Mhm.
in the
Right.
world and have these kind of conversations, or have to get this sort of information from people, or broker a kind of a negotiation or an agreement. So I think the more that people can practice that. So I would say to any parents or employers, yeah, give it a go, give us a call. We'll take you through it. We'll take
And
you
the
through
other,
it.
and
And
the other bit I think be really important to say is really, because I know this is really important to parents and guardians as well, is the maturing that we literally see over the course of the semester and the module with with the students, where they literally come in as very capable. I always call them senior students. There are final year students, but even the growth in their insight and maturity, they're often different individuals when they exit the module, and they've articulated that themselves. But we have often seen that, haven't we, in the room as well, which is fantastic. So good points.
I was going to say, if you think about, we as a society watch television and we watch films, it's all about real life. So, of course, the tools that actors learn is to be able to communicate in a way that is real life. So,
Yeah,
in a way, these skills, it isn't just, you could say, it isn't just going to help them in their business, but it may help them just in a broader way in their lives to have these tools. So I think hopefully the parents could take some
absolutely.
encouragement.
And I think it's so true, again, what both of you have said, because at this time of the year when, you know, young people are thinking about their next steps, do I want to go to university, what do I want to study? But what will give me really important skills to help me in my chosen career after graduation? Where will my learning make a difference? So I think we can point them to this module as well. But in addition, I'm very aware, Leandra and Jessica, there may also be listeners and viewers who are considering a career in the performing arts, or who perhaps are struggling to make their way in the arts. What words of encouragement would you offer to them?
Oh, I have several. I'm sure
Great,
you can.
wonderful. Go ahead.
Well, it will be the words that one of my professors gave to me, which I was very reluctant to hear at the time, is that you need a portfolio of skills and you need to be open-minded. And it isn't just performing skills, you need other skills, teaching skills, because generally a creative life is a very meandering one. And you will be doing very many different things. Even if you've chosen to be just an actor or just a dancer, inevitably you will do other things. Um, for the most part. So that is definitely like very good advice that someone gave me that I went and when I was young, and she was
Wonderful.
correct.
Yeah, I agree entirely. And I remember when I was at drama school about to leave, and I was like, well, I'm not going to be the person that has to have lots of other jobs. I'm just going to work as an actress, right? Like the like such confidence in myself, which was beautiful, like beautiful to see that in a young person. And then the journey I think you go on as a performer, when the struggles are the things that really make you grow. That's what I would say. So if you're a performer and you are struggling to pay your rent right now, been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and you're thinking, why is this so difficult? And why are it's such a difficult industry, acting, theatre, performing of any kind. There are I think it's changed now because of the internet, but there are a lot of gatekeepers. You got to go
Mm,
through a lot of gatekeepers to get that opportunity. So I
absolutely.
really I really believed in something really meritocratic when I left. And that those illusions left me, they left me very quickly, because it's a lot of randomness, it's a lot of luck, and it's a lot of who you know. So I would say exactly like Jessica. And if someone had said to me when I was leaving RADA, you're going to be working with business people and doing jobs like this, I would have gone, no, that's not what I want to do. I would have been so upset. But
And now look who you're working with.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So I think what Jessica said, be open-minded, like get out of the way of yourself, because you will have a set of skills as a performer that are so needed in the world. These skills that we have are so needed in the world in so many different contexts. So don't pigeon yourself into just the fact that you really want to do that one role on stage, or work with whoever. I'm sure you will do that too, but be open, because you have so much to offer in so many different walks of life.
Wonderful advice. I really do applaud you both, but pun intended. But there's also tremendous parallels from what you both shared. When you're giving this advice very generously to those who may be in the performing arts or thinking about it. But there's so many parallels with those in HR and business. You need such a repertoire of skills to be able to manage the challenges that organizations are facing today, particularly in such a challenging economic context as well. And also what we're seeing in the HR profession and for this generation, as we face sort of changing demographics, is students are always going to change roles every few years. Gone are the days where someone will stay in the same role with the same organization for 10, 15, 20 years as maybe our parents and grandparents did in the past. It's about CV enhancement and constantly changing roles to gain new experience and insight. And that's where we see some of the other added benefits of our module here on HR with that theatre and performance twist to it as well. So thank you. That's wonderful. Beginning to draw our podcast to a close, I wish we could spend longer chatting, but we always ask our contributors to offer a free resource to our viewers and listeners who may not otherwise have access to such information. Now, I know you're generously going to provide more details of your own backgrounds and your biographical picture, and listeners and viewers can find that in the link below, along with the link to Flying Cloud and the University of York School for Business and Society. But I know you're going to take a different approach to that free resource today and maybe do a little bit of an experiential sharing of the resource on camera. Leandra and Jessica, would you like to share a little bit more about that?
Yes, we're going to take you through. I'm going to start with a little embodiment exercise, which just means I'll talk you through, and then Leandra will take over with a bit of breath work.
Wonderful.
Are you
Over
going
to
to
you
go?
both.
Okay, we'll see how we go. Okay, so if you're sitting in your chair, just if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes. You don't have to close your eyes, you can keep them open. I'm going to close mine down. Generally, closing the eyes down just takes some of the information, which is the visual information, away so that you can focus deeper into your experience of your body. So just feel your body. Feel where you're sitting. You might be lying down even. You might be on a train. Notice your feet. Notice where they are and what they're touching. And then notice your seat, your bones, the seat, the bones in your hips that you sit on, called your sit bones. Just notice, what information are they taking in? Are you on a soft chair, on a hard chair? All of this is information that is being fed into your body. So just notice that information from your seat and from your feet. And just by tuning into that information, you are connecting yourself down into the ground. You're allowing your bones to connect down into the earth, and you are bringing awareness into your physical body. Now, our physical body lives in the present moment. It's the only place it lives. Our minds could be anywhere, but our body is in the present. So just by bringing your awareness to your bones, to your sit bones in your feet, here we are right now. And just notice the feelings and the sensations, potentially the heaviness that comes when you bring your awareness to your body. And just rest in that.
And as you come into your body, you may notice that your breath starts to change. So you can keep the eyes closed or you can just have them soft, but just tuning in for a few moments to your breath. So your body is the container for the breath. So just noticing for a couple of breaths whereabouts you can feel the movement of the breath. And this is not to judge it, this is not even to necessarily change it, this is just to gather a little bit of data for yourself. Where do you feel the movement of your breath in your body? And if you're comfortable with it, you might just want to place your hands anywhere where you can feel the breath. So you may be feeling it in your shoulders, your chest, your belly, your rib cage, just letting the hands rest somewhere where you can feel the movement of the breath. And if the breath is a little higher, you may have your hands on your upper chest. And again, this is a great bit of data for yourself. This means you have a tendency to breathe a little higher. And when we are having impactful conversations, when we're wanting to feel more grounded and have more presence, we want our breath to be lower and slower in the belly. So if your hands are higher, just slide them down to your lower belly, sort of below your belly button. And from here, just notice if you can start to breathe into your hands. Notice if as you breathe in, you can feel a slight expansion of your belly into your hands. So this is called belly breathing. This is also called diaphragmatic breathing. So not to get too technical right now, but your diaphragm underneath your rib cage is pushing down as you breathe in, which pushes your belly out. And perhaps you're already feeling that doing this low, slow belly breath is having a side effect of helping the mind to calm. But also what this does, this low, slow belly breath, is that it prepares your voice. So if we're wanting to have a clear, resonant voice, step one is to have an open, aligned physicality. And step two is to have a low, slow belly breath. So just practicing these two things, getting accustomed to what this feels like to really be present with your own body, to be present with your own breath, is not only regulating your nervous system, managing your nerves, but is also preparing your voice to be clear. So this is the foundation of the work. And then if we were to have more time, we would start to warm up the voice with some humming, and we would start to warm up the articulatory muscles of the lips, the teeth and the tongue. Not that we can warm up the teeth, but we can warm up the lips and the tongue. So yeah, you can just, if your eyes are closed, you can just gradually flutter the eyelids open, maybe have a big yawn. Yawning is great for the nervous system and it's great for the voice, a big kind of really impolite yawn. It makes lots of noise. And you can just feel yourself coming back and just looking around your space and just noticing if anything has changed. And just deciding for yourself if that shifted anything for you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I'd like to say just a few words because, you know, what you've shared with us is so generous, but so hugely important. So what I can tell listeners and viewers, practicing what you've just shared in any difficult moment, as you said earlier, in a car, maybe in a work situation or a family situation, I can confirm, you know, we've gotten so much positive feedback from our students, but also saying how your approach, such as what you've just shared with us, has been really helpful for them going into an interview, but also for some who are now in HR professions, being the interviewer and going in. And that's just a tip of the iceberg in terms of what our students have learned with the work that we've been collaborating on. So thank you both very, very much, Leandra and Jessica at Flying Cloud. So our time, unfortunately, is up. Thank you so much again. Another first that we had a free resource that was to camera, Not just a handout or a link below. So this really has been a wonderful podcast for so many firsts. So thank you so very much. I also want to thank the University of York, in particular the School for Business and Society, who through their just insight and generous support of the module that we collaborate on have been hugely supportive as well, and to our students as well, and the wonderful work that you do. Again, for our listeners and viewers, more information in the link below. And this is just the first of a few in the series. So please come back and stay tuned. And you can also find other useful podcast contributors in our series as well. So thank you, Leandra. Thank you, Jessica. And thank you to all the wonderful work that you do for us in Flying Clyde. Bye for now, everyone.
Thanks. Bye bye.